Hi everyone, welcome to UBS Trending. I'm your host, Wendy Mock. It's been an upsetting few weeks, to say the least. I'm sure all of us have been watching the war in Ukraine unfold, and when a crisis or disaster hits, we all want to help urgently, and many of us help by donating. I'm pleased to be joined today by Liz Cribbs from our Family Advisory and Philanthropy Services team to share some insights on what to do in terms of giving when time is of the essence, and also what not to do when it comes to charitable giving. Liz, welcome.
Thanks, Wendy. Great to be here.
So I know so many of us want to help out, and there are so many organizations out there, and especially in the age of social media, there are fundraisers everywhere. But I think for some of us, all of that information can be a bit overwhelming. So how do you suggest someone who wants to help and wants to give start?
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, it can feel really overwhelming when there are no shortage of organizations floating around with asks, and you really do want to make a difference, but you want to make sure that the money gets into the right hands. So there are a few things that you can do. One thing, and this is the one time that the IRS can be your friend, is you can go onto irs.gov. All charities have to register with the IRS annually, so you can go onto IRS and look on their online search tool to see if the charity that's asking you for money is in good standing and legitimate. So that's one thing that you can do. You can also look at online search tools like Charity Navigator and Candid.org that can help you do the same thing to make sure the charity is registered, but also can give you financial data and other information about the not-for-profit so you can learn more. Second, and this is something that sounds pretty elementary, but it actually is important to do, is look at the charity's website. You can learn a lot about the mission, the leadership of the organization, and even who else is funding that organization. So it's definitely something that you should look into. And then the other thing that we always like to suggest is to drill down a little bit on the use of funds and read the fine print before you give. Sometimes organizations will say your donation will go to XYZ cause or disaster until the need is met. In our view, at that time, the funds will go to other programs. Now, if you've bought into that charity and you believe in what it's doing, that might be okay with you. But if you really want your funds to go to that one specific issue area or crisis area, you want to make sure that that's where the funds will go and nowhere else.
That's great information. And there's so many good organizations out there, but unfortunately, as we know, there are some not so great people who might take advantage of good intentions. So what would you suggest those who want to give pay attention to or not do or be aware of?
Yeah, that's a great question. The skeptic in you is coming out, Wendy, and it actually is important to think that way a little bit. When you're dealing with money, there are a few things to be aware of. One thing is if the organization is only accepting cash, gift cards, or wire transfers, because leaves little audit trail there. Most legitimate charities have multiple ways of donating, including credit card donations and cash. So I would, again, beware if they're just asking for cash only. Another thing is just to keep in mind with credit card donations, when you're making an online donation, make sure you uncheck that recurring gift box. Sometimes that recurring gift is automatically checked and you have to uncheck it. It's actually happened to me before where I've made a donation and a month later my card got charged again. So definitely look out for that. Another thing is if someone sends you a link on social media, on email, please give to this organization, I've researched it. Instead of clicking on that link, because links can be manipulated and hijacked, it's better to go onto the web and search for that organization through the website and not through that link that's been forwarded. You can also, it's a good thing to kind of make sure that that website is secure, and there are different ways that you can do that, only because you want to make sure that you're going to the right website, and you also want to make sure that if you're giving through that website, it's secure. So that's another thing. And then the third thing I would say is to be wary of organizations that spring up in the wake of disasters. There's always going to be those people that kind of want to make a dollar off of something, and that's definitely a minority. Most people really do want to help. But even those organizations that spring up and they do want to help, in times of crisis, that track record and know-how can be really, really critical on the front line. So I'm not saying that startups can be ineffective. They can be effective, but use your judgment, and sometimes that track record can really have the impact that you want.
That's great advice. I'm so glad that we're arming our viewers with some good defensive tactics. And speaking of organizations that spring up in the wake of any disaster or crisis, I'm sure we've all seen the GoFundMe campaigns and the individual fundraisers out there. Any thoughts on those?
Yeah, I knew that you were going to bring up GoFundMe. It's a great question. And I have mixed feelings about GoFundMe, as most people probably do. GoFundMe and other crowd funding campaigns usually, or quite often, are trying to garner money to go to individuals. So that those donations are not tax deductible usually, and they also aren't regulated. So again, if you trust the source of the GoFundMe, and you're not worried about the tax deduction, that's okay. But again, I do think that it's good to be careful when you're looking at GoFundMe. Another thing is, and again, the space is evolving because GoFundMe now has GoFundMe.org and GoFundMe causes. So on those specific subsites of GoFundMe, they say that it is tax deductible if you give to certain charities. One thing that we suggest clients do is, it's great if you get a name of an organization from GoFundMe, but once you get that idea, again, go through the web, go directly to the website, and while you're there on the not-for-profit's website, do a little more research.
So it sounds like key is to still do some of your own due diligence.
Yeah.
So you mentioned if you have the name of an organization. What about for those of us who don't have a particular organization in mind? How would you suggest we go about beginning our research or our screening?
Yeah, we do get questions from clients on that all the time in times of crisis and disaster, and also just normally. So I do have a few ideas for you. One is donor advised funds. So, many donor advised funds want to make it easy on their donors to give, and they have teams of staff that research organizations. So, just last night in preparation for our talk, I went onto Fidelity Charitable's website as well as National Philanthropic Trust. They're both DAFs on the UBS platform. They had pages dedicated to the Ukrainian crisis. So it's a great place to go to see kind of a starting point. I'm not saying don't do your own vetting, but sometimes looking at a pre-vetted list is helpful. So that's one thing that you can do. Another idea that we often suggest to clients is community foundations. So community foundations are grant-making public charities, and they play a key role in identifying and solving community problems. There's a locator, and I wrote down the website. It's the Council on Foundations, has a website that can help you locate the community foundation that's closest to where you live. It's a great place to go and just see what they're doing. And again, if you're local and they're local, they're more likely to pick up your phone call if you have questions. And then another organization is the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, again, to get names and then do your own research. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention UBS's very own Optimus Foundation. We like to say that the Optimus Foundation is the execution component of UBS's global philanthropy. We're the only global wealth manager with a client-facing foundation, such as the Optimus Foundation. It's staffed with experts that really spend a lot of time on due diligence and looking at sustainability, looking at data-driven impact. If you are interested, or any of our listeners are interested in seeing who our partners are, they can go to www.ubs.com/Ukraine Relief to learn more.
Thank you. Those are such great and valuable resources for our viewers out there. And we talked a lot about meeting the immediate need. A lot of people really want to give to the emergency needs, like helping refugees at the borders. This is very understandable. But what about for those who are thinking more longer term? How can we effectively contribute to longer term help?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we always tell clients that disasters take a long time to resolve themselves. At the beginning, you have that immediate pull on the heartstrings. You see it in the press all the time, and capital and money tends to flow. But once things fade a little bit in the headlines, sometimes that capital dries up, and the need really is still there. So if it is a cause that you care about, we suggest to clients that they kind of just shift their thinking. They stay with the cause, don't leave it, but kind of think more, instead of immediate relief, onto rebuilding and regeneration in those areas. Again, sometimes it takes years to do that. So instead of looking at organizations that are on the front line and deal with crisis management, to look more at organizations that deal with long-term needs like stable housing, education, ongoing healthcare, instead of things like emergency relief, evacuation, sanitation. So just a shift in mindset, and also sticking with the cause that you care about.
Thank you, Liz, so much for this discussion on how to give safely and effectively. So much useful information there for those of us out there who want to donate and want to help with this crisis in some way or the other.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you to all our viewers for joining us. For more information about the Ukraine Relief Fund and how you can help, go to ubs.com/Ukraine relief or speak to your financial advisor. And again, thank you, Liz, to you and your team for supporting our frontline workers like this.
Thanks, Wendy.
And to follow us on UBS social media, check out Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also you can check out past episodes of Trending on Demand. Until next time, I'm Wendy Mock. Have a great day and keep your eyes on what's trending.